the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, please, to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda passes. So first up this afternoon, it says evening. This afternoon we have, for information, Dr. Hopper is going to give us some training on high reliability schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this okay, Scott? Can you hear all right? Okay, great. If you have any questions, please feel free to pause and ask along the way. I placed before you a little handout here of a short little slide presentation. I'm not going to go over every slide with you because we are kind of pressed for time. I only have about 15 minutes or so to really just give you a brief update on this. A couple trustees are much more familiar with HRS than maybe the new ones, and we really haven't done an update since back when I was hired. So I think it's a great opportunity to just kind of continue to paint the picture on the direction that the board's going, or where the district is going, and what high reliable schools, what's that really mean? What's it all about? So we're going to kind of go through these slides, and I'm just going to highlight a few and then answer some questions. So high reliable schools comes from the phrase HRO, high reliable organizations. And those are typically organizations that really want to do the very best in whatever it is that they're going to do. That's exactly us. The next slide in here that I've shown you is a great little analogy that Marzano himself even uses, and it's called a FOD walk. You can see a picture there of a naval aircraft with all hands on deck. That's kind of where that phrase comes from. They're on the deck surface. And what they do is they literally line up, foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder, and they all walk along that deck looking for foreign objects. That's foreign objects and debris is the FOD. And the reason they do that is you can imagine when a jet aircraft maybe takes off of a runway on land, it might pick up a little rock or something in the tires. When it lands on a ship like this, that rock might be there on the deck surface. When those jets fire up, that one little rock can cause all kinds of damage. I mean, it literally could propel right through somebody, another person there that's working to send that ship off. All kinds of things could be on that deck that could cause issues. And so this is a good example as all hands on deck. Everybody looking to make the system better. How can we make sure this is safe so that ship does its duty? There are several other examples on the next slide you can see of other high reliable organizations, and that includes aircraft maintenance teams. We've all been on planes where maybe a flight's been delayed because they're concerned about something little, and they really want to check it out. Nuclear power plants, NASA, we've all seen lots of TV shows with the movies and the countdown, and they can be scrubbed in the last final few seconds if something's not exactly right. It's all because they're looking to make sure that the system is set up to perform in the way that it's supposed to set up. Well, that's really where we're at. That's really what I want to do. We want to figure out how our district can move from good to great, and what's that going to take. In the past, if you flash back even 50 years, 20 years, for far too often, in my opinion, and Marzano would say the same thing, it's been okay for some kids not to do well in school. Back in the 50s, 60s, if a kid wanted to drop out and go to work in the mines or in the logging industry, it was just okay. You just do that. Today, there's a little different expectation. Clearly, do we have kids that make that choice? Occasionally we do, but we really try all hands on deck to keep that kid engaged in school. That's kind of where we're at today. I want to read something to you right from the HRS book that each of you have a copy of, just to kind of share this overall direction that we're going. It's right on page 1, right after the introduction, but really how does this tie into what we're doing as a school? And this is what it says. The traditional schooling structure in a large portion of the world has involved individual teachers in isolated classrooms making decisions based on their experience, expertise, preferences, and interests. This structure has subjected students to an educational lottery in which what they learn, how much they learn, how they are assessed, and what happens when they are struggling at most are an entire function of the assigned teacher. Those who hope to lead a high reliable school, HRS, must confront the challenge of reducing this variability so that all students have access to good teaching, a guaranteed and viable curriculum, careful monitoring of their learning, systemic interventions when they struggle, and extensions when they demonstrate high levels of proficiency. Their best hope for meeting this challenge lies in making the professional learning communities at work, that's PLCs, process the cornerstone of HRS creation. In doing so, educators will serve the cause of both excellence and equity. And so that is why we are kind of backing up this year to really spend this next year focused on PLCs and putting a lot of resources and emphasis into the PLC process so that we can have that specific foundation for HRS. All right, so the next slide, let's talk a little bit more specifically then about HRS. In an HRS system, safe and collaborative, we've been talking about that. That's a level 1. I'll get into more details about that. But it's all about improving teaching and learning and getting as many students as possible to meet and exceed our standards, our expectations, which are generally set by the state.
Sean, where are you at?
So while I'm on slide, I'm guessing probably slide 8.
Page 4.
So kind of based on this concept, just summarizing, this is the work of Bob Marzano and Rick Dufour after 40 years of educational research. So it's not anything, it's not this new something or another, the new greatest thing down the road. This is really what will move the needle significantly for our schools. So I want to take a few minutes and just kind of go over the 5 levels. The 5 levels are presented on the second slide on page 10. I'm guessing your pages are just like mine with 2 slides on each page? Okay. So the bottom slide on page 10 talks about the levels. And I think this ties really well to a question that Chair Smith asked me earlier today in regards to what's it cost and how many schools stick with it later down the road. And we'll touch on all of that. But you can see here, as we're journeying through our foundation to get ready to go with HRS, level 1 is all about a safe and collaborative culture. It's an attitude, a change of mind, so that we have public participation, we have staff at all levels, certified, classified, every level, that feel empowered and are empowered in helping make decisions in the district. That decision could be teaching strategies in a 3rd grade curriculum. That could be a decision in regards to schedules. It could be a decision on all kinds of different things. It's that team approach, being part of it. That level 1 is super important, and we started that work last year, continuing that work this year, and with all of these levels, it's a continual process. It's not 1 or 2 years and you're done and you move on to the next one. You're always building that rapport with your staff. We generally have 10% turnover every year, so it's continually training our staff on what we value and what's important. Then we move into level 2 HRS, which specifically targets the teaching strategies. What's going on in the classrooms? How do you do that? This district's had a great head start with our teaching framework and the models that we've been using in this district for many years before I got here. So I feel like level 2 is going to be pretty foundational when we're able to get to that stage. Level 3 talks about a systemic approach to making sure that what happens in one school is happening in all the schools, so that it's not so much teacher-driven, it's a guaranteed and viable curriculum, so that we're consistent, so that you as a board get to determine what does every 3rd grader need to know and be able to do. And now we have that expectation in all 11 of your elementary schools, so that it's consistent. It's not so dependent upon the lottery, as the very first or second paragraph in the book talks about, which good teacher did you get, or which maybe brand new teacher, a little rookie or teacher did you get. It's not about that. It's about guaranteeing that every kid's going to know and be able to do whatever those essentials are. And level 4 and 5, level 4 moves towards a standards referenced system of kind of reporting, and that's grading. And level 5 is competency-based. And level 5, Marzano would tell you, is called the rare air, AIR, rare air. And the reason for that is not a lot of schools get to that point. A lot of schools get through level 3, and then they'll move into competency-based reporting level 4, standards reference reporting level 4, and then the competency-based piece, some schools it's a natural and they get there, some schools they choose not to. You already have experiences in the school system where you are seeing competency-based education in its finest. We have an incredible K-Tech program. That K-Tech program, you don't get to start off rebuilding that car, rebuilding that engine. You start off with little components, working your way up so that you have the skills and abilities to be able to finalize an end product. We've been doing that in lots of classes. Our middle school woodshop program, you start off learning how to work the equipment, then you end up building some kind of a cool end project, right, that you take home to mom or dad or something like that. That's the competency-based approach. So we already see experiences of that happening in our schools already today. So I don't think it's going to be too rare of an error for Coeur d'Alene schools. But ultimately speaking, if we can focus and get through levels 1, 2, and 3, level 4 just kind of naturally happens, and level 5 naturally happens. So let's talk about that in a little bit further detail. And if I'm going too fast, I know I am because I have 10 minutes. But please chime in, because I don't want to blow by this, but we're really a year or so ahead because this year's focus is PLC for that foundation piece. But I want you to kind of see where we're headed and how this ties in, how HRS ties in. So on the bottom of my page 6, so slide 12, this is the glove that I talked about when I first came on board a little over a year ago. It's recognizing that many of the things that currently Coeur d'Alene School District is doing or did already do, how does that tie in with the high reliable schools and the 5 levels? Well, you can see here there's been a great crosswalk put together to show us that we're not starting over. This is not a new thing that we're doing. We're not adding more things to people's plates. We're actually streamlining things, and it's actually going to feel like things are coming off of our staff's plates because we're going to get more systemic, and we're going to get, or systematic, I should say, and we're going to be able to tie everything that we've already been doing to the direction of HRS. So you can see on that slide there, you can see that the bottom level on the safe and collaborative, kind of the level 1 certification process, that's your PEDC work that we spent a lot of resources on. It's our MTSS, it's our sources of strength, it's creating that environment for learning to foster. And we have that. Level 2 talks about our safe and collaborative, culture. There you go. Instructional framework, instructional coaches that we just were able to put together this current year, although we've had some individual coaches for several years. Now we have even a better focus on our coaches. Level 3 talks about our curriculum, and here we are, we've got our curriculum cycles and where we did some cross-district collaboration already at our last collaboration meeting. Level 4 is our reference standards referenced, and we have elementaries already standards-based grading. So then there's level 5, the rare air. Are we going to get to the rare air? I could see us absolutely getting to the rare air. So you can see how taking just a quick snapshot of many of the things that we've already been working on and tying that to our HRS, I think it just paints a great picture, and it helps everybody understand this is not a new thing. The new superintendent is coming to town, and okay, now we're dropping everything we've been doing and we're doing something different. This is actually putting everything together. So slide 13 is just a quick slide to kind of show how all that gearing works. It is based on a PLC foundation. Without having that PLC in place, you struggle with some of the other components of HRS, and that's why we had to pause and really take this next year to make sure that we are not PLC light, that we really are PLC with fidelity. We understand what a professional learning community is about. So,
Sean,
yeah.
Can you talk just briefly about your history with HRS?
I can.
I know it was in at least your last district.
The last 2 districts, in fact, and in my last district, last year, So my first year here, we had some of my schools certify and complete HRS level 3. So they had got there. We learned that some schools you can get through in a year. It's not easy, but you can accomplish it in a year. Some schools it takes a little more than a year, and so some schools are working on 2 certifications. They had to have a fall revisit while they're still working on that new year's goals. But it's incredible. I spoke to the principal at one of my elementary schools this year when I found out that she had made level 3 certification, and I just wanted to check in and see how things were going, knowing that we're moving in that same area as well, and just get a feel for how's the staff, how they're a growing district as well, and she was in the largest elementary school in the district, and it was super exciting to just hear her report and hear what they were about, and how the staff have bought in, and how ultimately how the parents and the students are performing, and that's really what we're about. So we want that to happen.
So that started under your watch?
It did.
And how about in Wyoming?
And Wyoming, we barely got started, and then the very next year I left. So the strategic plan that the school board adopted in my district in Wyoming, that was all 5 of the HRS levels. That was the strategic plan. We will do this. It was all tied together. So we barely got started on that, but I was absolutely convinced this is the right thing to do. So we were working on level 1 when I left there, went to North Dakota and started it right away. So in the 3 years there, as I said, we took the first year to kind of get things going and get the base understood. They had the PLC process in place pretty well, so it was a little faster moving. And so my second year there, we were able to start with level 1. My third year, level 2. When I interviewed here, I shared with you that several of my schools had met level 2. And then last year, my first year here, we actually had some continuation of those schools that got level 3. So some good opportunities for us. I know somebody to call if we ever want to pick brains and see how some teachers and things got some stuff done over there. But more importantly too, I just want to make sure I'm on record to share this is bringing all the work that we're currently doing together. It is not some new thing that requires all kinds of new man hours to do. In fact, I believe it's Kellogg down the road that is also already level 1 certified. They're going through this process. I believe they talked about it costing around 10 grand for them to have some trainers come in and do some things with their staff throughout the year, and then also do the certification for their schools. And I don't know if they're going to pay to do that for level 2. They were asking me my recommendations, and I told them I would recommend having Marzano still do that through level 3. But they ultimately, you could self-perform those. You know what you're looking for, you know those evidences, but I think that there's something rewarding to your staff and even your community when they see an outside agency, like an accreditation visit even, saying, hey, these guys are spot on. It's not just the superintendent and his or her team that says we're doing the right work. This is an outside company that's coming in and saying, you guys are doing great work. And so, and then sometimes your schools can be doing such great work, they end up being model schools, so they're exemplified in the Marzano system, and other schools across the country will call you for pointers, and you can get some. It helps teachers realize that the work that they're doing is not for anything. It's really valuable. So really, I could probably just pause there. It's already 4:21, and I planned on about 15 minutes for this point, but I wanted to just make sure that the board's aware why we're putting the resources together with the PLC this year, and things are moving along very well. You're going to have all your building leadership teams will be pretty well versed in the PLC process between now and the end of the school year. And then next August, the first, really out of the first 3 or 4 days back for teachers, 2.5 of those days will be right at Lake City High School, participating in a district-wide PLC summit right here in Coeur d'Alene. And so we'll have all of our staff be able to go through that. And next year, I believe there's just going to be a lot of focused attention on identifying the essentials for all of our core courses. Teachers understanding how to do that work within a PLC, principals understanding how to help better align it so that teachers can have common planning time to be able to have those conversations, and we'll be well underway. And then we're not going to hold back any school that is ready to go with HRS, but Our target would be, as I think I showed you on the second to last slide, we plan to begin certifying our schools in level 1 HRS in next school year, 23-24. So by the spring of 24, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to report that we have the vast majority of our schools level 1 certified. So I'd be happy to pause there and ask some more questions. I appreciate Chair Smith sending out some of the questions she asked and shared with all of you. I was going to review those with you all tonight. Now I didn't have to because she sent you front-loaded you with them. So thanks for doing that. So is there any other specific questions I can answer about HRS before we start talking about our second item on the agenda? All right. Then I think let's get going on the next item, and we'll just continue to bring you along as we continue down this journey, and we'll update you how things are going with our PLC journey for this year, and then HRS next year. All right.
Does Dr. Harper, does this go with it?
That does. That's
Is
a
this part
yep.
of the next.
There's
this is great
an awesome old document. Dr. Nelson is extremely well versed at putting incredible information flyers together, and so this is something that we've been using in the district this year to help tie that picture. And I sent that all to you in the emails that went out on Friday as well, so tried to front load you with a bunch of homework over the weekend if you have a chance. If you don't, you can go back and visit it in the next month or so as we move forward.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Do you have anyone you want to introduce for
Well,
consideration?
I think what we're going to do on the next conversation is go over the levy, and I'm going to kick it off, and then we've got somebody kind of presenting various different slides, and I'll have them come join me, and then when we get done, we'll stand for questions as well as we kind of go through things. So if you're ready, we'll get started. So you also have slides, and I think your slides might look a titch different than mine, because I printed mine out first thing this morning, and they were still making some adjustments throughout the day. So really, the plan for this is to spend probably 15 to 25 minutes, hopefully, giving you a brief update on why and where we're at with our needs for our levy and SPFL. And you've seen, I think, slide 2 in your packets will just show a little overall agenda there. And then the hope is to spend the remainder, half hour or so after this is over in dialogue and being able to answer any questions that anybody might ask, because we do have a proposed action item for you in the agenda.
And you know it's a workshop, you could take action tonight if you so choose.
You betcha. We do ask it like that. So long story short, first couple of slides, I'll be super quick. Just going to go over why we need these two levies. The tax rates will be included in this so we can see what those tax implications are, and really talk to you about what the levy, what it is, and maybe even some of the new rules that we have to have in place as we advertise this levy this go around. So the third, I think might be slide 4. It talks about our levy. And there's a lot of data on there, and I'm not going to read it to you, but this is just a snapshot of what the $20 million current levy goes to fund in the district. You've seen a lot of this over the last couple months in various different workshops as you've been participating in understanding this levy as well. With our current budget, this levy funds about 23% of all of our operating expenses. You can see that it funds all of a couple of items I want to call out. It funds all of our athletics and extracurricular activities. It funds all of most all of our curriculum resources. Our skills trade, like the K-Tech Center that I just shared with you, in regards to an excellent example of a project COMSI-based system. It funds that program. It funds our music and art and our enrichment programs. And it funds, we've had $300,000 or so in our transportation budget, for instance, that it has been funding us to keep up to date and keep caught. I see 6 raised in there, but we're at, I'm going to share out 3. Shannon. Thanks.
I told Mike Casey's going to raise his hand in about 30 seconds. So 600 has been this current year. In the past years when we've increased it by 20, we've identified that we've been able to keep up with both the state best appreciation, and we can lower going into the March 2023 levy $300K. So going from 600 to 300. A along with the state depreciation funding, we should be good.
Because the depreciation funding's increased because we've gotten buses
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
on
we've
schedule.
got our plan for catching up has worked, so, thank you.
So buses we get paid on for 15 years. So if we pay $100,000 for a bus, they pay us back, I think, $85,000.
85%.
85%, so $85,000 on a $100,000 bus over 15 years. Over 15 years. But when you're riding 10 buses or 6 buses a year, it's okay. But what happened when we bumped that to 600, we had like 40 of our 66 buses were after 15 years. So we weren't getting money on those 40 buses anymore. And we use that money to buy new buses. So that's why we had to play catch up. And they did that during the 2012, or the 09 recession, 10, 11, 12. They quit buying buses and technology and all that sort of stuff to make ends meet. But then we had to play catch up.
So again, really yes, thanks Casey for that. And the point of this slide about our levy is just to show that it's not one or two things. It's everywhere. It's integral. Sometimes people refer to our M&O levy as a supplemental levy. It's not so supplemental. That's just how it works. I think the Post Falls superintendent likes to refer to it as a fundamental levy because it's so integral into everything that we do. So that was kind of the point of that slide number 4. I'll pass the mic over to Trent, who's going to walk us through the next few slides. Thanks, Trent.
Well, thanks for this opportunity. I haven't had an opportunity to address the board prior to this time, but I get the distinct privilege of talking about the next 5 slides or 6 slides about Our Levy Matters. And I was talking to Nick Lillquist, obviously our principal at Canfield Middle School, and he made that comment. He goes, well-rounded schools are the best schools. And I think that's a really important statement from the standpoint that, there's a lot of charter schools, there's a lot of, schools that have individual niches of certain things. But the neat thing about a school district like ours is that we have these comprehensive schools that allow our students to experience a lot of different things. I was thinking about it like, even right now, 3 of our 4 soccer teams are going to state, which is pretty cool. Since I've started, I've been in every school every week, for an hour and a half every week, just to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the schools. And I was in a jazz band today, a jazz band classroom, and I was telling Sean earlier, they just knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was so fun just to see those kids doing those things. The drama presentation, I know there's some drama presentations this weekend. PD, Sean mentioned, Dr. Hawker mentioned about that. The PD for our teachers is so important. I was in Salt Lake a couple of weeks ago with 2 of our schools, and we went to the PLC conferences. And the enthusiasm that they had, those 2 schools were sharing about it was just really clear. In fact, I came back and I said, and I really believe this, and I'm not just saying this, I've been in this school district just since July and been able to observe and see and hear some things and just kind of listen a little bit to what Dr. Hawker's talking about. And I truly believe this, we're on the verge of something special. The PLC and the HRS and the teaching framework that's going on, they all are going to merge together, and they really are going to create an incredible educational environment for our students. And we just got to kind of stay the course and just kind of persevere and keep grinding and leaning in on these different things. The electives, I was able to talk to one of our teachers who does survival science. And again, just talking to him and the excitement that he had about that. And that's just an example of that, but that idea that our best schools are well-rounded schools. And if we just continue, and the levy allows us to do that. If we didn't have the levy, there's so many things that would have to be cut out, and they wouldn't be well-rounded. And our students wouldn't have that opportunity to experience a tremendous amount of variety in their education. On the next slide, it talks a little bit about, the different learning programs. I've been privileged to go on a learning walk already in one of our elementary schools. Just beginning to see the instruction that takes place in our schools is pretty phenomenal. Lakes Middle School next week is going to invite parents to come and do and be a part of a learning walk and just open the doors and saying, look, I want you to see what's going on in our schools. I want you to see the great instruction that's occurring. And I was in another school and they were talking, in a 6th grade school, they were doing these Socratic seminars. The academic vocabulary that was being exhibited by these 6th grade students would have just been amazing to you. And I saw it at the 8th grade level as well, and we have it at our high school level, in our elementary level, when I was doing it, the learning walk, the interactions that were occurring between the students. That's what makes me super excited, knowing that truly we are on the verge. But without the levy, obviously, we're just not going to be able to do that. So it affects our students, and that's probably the number one thing I want to be able to communicate to you. It's not just programs. It's really about our students. It's about people. And if we go to the next slide, where you're going to see the beautiful picture of Dr. Hawker there, again, with Mr. Mahoney, Kevin Mahoney, our Teacher of the Year, last year from Venture High School. We also had the Idaho History Teacher of the Year in Colin Donovan, and our Idaho Art Teacher of the Year with Jasmine Year. So we have some incredible staff. And the one thing, again, that I think is super important for us to understand, that the quality of the district is always in the people. It's not necessarily in the program. Now, the program's important. We have to have the right program, as Dr. Hawker just shared with you, the PLC and the HRS and the teaching framework. Those are great quality programs, but truly what makes a district great is the people. And as we're looking at this, for us to be able to recruit quality people does require funding. It's just, it's a fact. It's the way it is. And, we'd love to be able to say people are going to come even if they're making $5,000, $10,000 less than they are across the border, or even a few $1,000s less from different districts neighboring than us. It's just not reality. We can't operate under that premise. The strength of this district is in the people. And all I can emphasize to you is, in the short time that I've been a part of this district, and I meet with people every day, we have incredible administrators, we have incredible teachers in this district, but we got to retain them. And it's going to require funding for us to do that. So again, it's a plea, there's no doubt it's a plea. How are we going to do that? This levy matters, it truly does. If we go to the next page, it's slide 7, and it has a picture of one of our nurses. Again, I've worked in a district where we've been in buildings where you don't have a nurse in your building full time. And it's not, obviously everybody chips in and they do an incredible job, but it's not ideal. It's comforting to parents to know we have a health professional in every one of our buildings all day long, because there are just things that occur. You think about diabetic situations, you think about, seizure disorders, you think about, students that are having some, allergies, and if we don't have a health professional there, it's just problematic, it's difficult. And the levy matters. The levy allows us to be able to have these kind of health professionals in our buildings on a daily basis. The next slide is, as you look at our SROs and our 4 campus officers there. Safety and security, it's just common sense in this day and age. We need to have them. You begin to think about what our schools and our parents, sending their kids to schools if we don't have that type of safety and security in every building. And the beauty of it is this: it's not just not about hiring SROs. It's not about hiring campus safety officers. It's about getting the right people. And this is why. The number one deterrent to school violence isn't necessarily an SRO or a safety officer. It's about where the students feel safe enough where they're going to actually talk to these people when they have a concern. Because that's where the true magic happens. That's where we can be proactive, is because they build the relationships and the rapport to a degree where our students feel safe enough, secure enough, and they trust these individuals and say, hey, I know of a situation here, I want you to be aware of it. That's how we have safe schools. You know, you can have all kinds of safety measures, and it's important to have the check-in systems and all of that. None of that's it's great, let me just say that, but it's not nearly as good as having these SROs that build great rapport and relationships with students so that they go and talk to them when there's a need. And we have good ones, I can tell you that. We have really, really good SROs in talking to them. You know, I had a parent last week, I was in a meeting, and the parent said to the SRO, you know what I hear? And my daughter said, you know what? Everybody knows that they need to respect you because you are super cool. You know, and that's a great statement. That's what we want our students to be able to say about our SROs. Finally, in the last slide that I'm going to talk about, it just talks about our levy matters, and it shares a couple of statistics about student success, Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, and district-wide. You know, my charge to our secondary schools is every student, every senior will have a written plan that articulates their post-secondary goal that's not just on paper, but it's viable, it's doable. So that they can look at it and say, okay, I know what I'm gonna do once I graduate from this school, and I know how to do it. I think that's critical, and these numbers here kind of speak to that. I mean, scholarships are a big part of that. Certifications are a big part of that. The fact that we have students that score a 5 on their AP is a big part of that. And empowering them to be successful in that next pathway, the next phase of their journey. But again, the only way we can do all these things is, you know, we've got a levy that's 23% of our budget. We need to be able to have that in place. So I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to just say, this is a special place. You guys are a board of a special district where we have students that are served very, very well. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not work to do. We get a lot of work to do, there's no doubt. But we also have a lot of great people here. So I just, you know, again, beg you to support this as best you can, this levy.
Good afternoon, trustees. We are in the Great Reset, and I have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our staff. Mr. Derrick really tried to emphasize the fact that the strength of our district lies in the people who we hire. But certainly we've all been in the experience where we want to get a bite to eat, and it takes a little bit longer to get through the drive-thru. Or we've gone to purchase something at a local store, and it's harder to find the person to be able to ring you up. We're in a time whereby, if you listen to the words of Sam Wolkenauer, who works for the Idaho State Department of Labor, we are in a 5-year reset, whereby the normal that we expect to see in terms of human capital is not going to be normal. And that's something that certainly hit us in this environment because we rely upon the people that we put in front of our kids every single day. There are some examples that we wanted to highlight for you. The first is I'd like to talk about my mom. My mom is 75 years old. She just turned 75, and she still works full-time at Kootenai Health. Why? Because she said, I'd like to retire, and Kootenai Health says, can you just wait a little bit longer? We just can't find somebody to replace you right now. And she frankly loves it, so she continues. But that's a great example. It's harder to be able to find people with experience to do the jobs that we expect to have. We also are in a time where the economy is strong. Coeur d'Alene is a demanding place to be and an in-demand place to be. And because of the environment in which we live, people want to come here. But with that, everybody wants to have something to do. They want to have a job. So that job demand is also raising up the concern that not everybody's going to be able to find what they're looking for. In addition, we also have a nationwide survey. You've probably read a little bit about the teacher shortage in our country. But nationally, this is not just a teacher thing. 20 to 30% of all people employed in the United States are planning to quit this year. That's a nationwide survey. We also have a challenge here in Kootenai County about child care. and that regionally this is one of the most expensive places to get daycare or childcare. Finally, we work in an environment whereby we are looking for flexibility, and it doesn't always work in education. Our bells ring, we need to have people in places, and it's not as easy for us to be able to offer the flexibility that we would like to do. Ultimately, yes, we are in a shakeup, and again, it's not going to be something that is immediate. However, if you take a look at slide 11, we are at a disadvantage. Right now, we have over 500 employees in our district that make under $15 an hour. I just passed Burger King, coming right down Ramsey Road, offering $17 an hour starting wage. If you go to an Amazon warehouse, you get $1,000 signing bonuses, whether you last a week or not. $1,000 signing bonus. Right now, our lowest wage is $12.75 per hour. We presented to you a plan a couple of months ago as to how to remediate that, but that is the environment in which we live right now. It is very difficult for us to be able to meet those expectations when you've got banners and flyers and reader boards advertising much larger than what we are offering. We've also been very fortunate that we've done some work over the last several years to raise our bus driver pay to over $17 an hour. It's now at $18.35. But as we do that, other environments are raising up their starting pays. The resort, if you want to drive a bus, similar rate, now $21 an hour. Certificated, we have a large issue with turnover. This last year, we lost about 15% of all certificated staff in the district. And the number one reason why people wanted to leave was pay. That means that if you kept that going, that means you would turn over your entire certificated staff in 6 years. Certainly not sustainable. Not to maintain the qualities that we're looking for in our district. It's also somewhat distressing that in the state of Idaho, we actually have dead zones within our salary matrix, meaning that unless you take a minimum of 10 credits a year, you are stuck at the exact same salary for a minimum of 3 years. Ultimately, we provided you some information in the July workshop as to how we feel like we might be able to remediate this. But again, we've always had a competitive advantage in Coeur d'Alene. Look around. This is a desirable place to be. And we've always been able to rely upon our benefits package and our competitive salaries. Right now, if you are a teacher looking to teach in North Idaho, we no longer have the highest starting wage in our region. And we are losing quality staff simply because of the bottom line. So, we presented to you again several months some proposed salary schedules of how we would like to move our salary structures so that we can remain competitive. That is on my slide 12, titled Proposed Salary Schedules. You've seen this information before, so this is just an overview for you. Ideally, we would like to increase our starting pay so that minimum cell $12.75 is at $15 an hour. And we would like to remove our dead zones from years 7 to 12. Again, in 5 years, these dead zones prohibit our staff from making money from additional salary unless they take on additional responsibilities or change. We'd also like to condense the number of columns. I believe we have 12 or 13 different columns right now of salaries based on a matrix. We'd like to reduce that down. I believe the proposal was 6 or 7. Ultimately, we'd like to increase our classified salaries by an average of 13%, but that would cost our district around $2.5 million to achieve. But it's not enough just to be able to take care of our deeply needed classified staff. We also have to address our certificated staff as well, so that we again are competitive, that when we do have a teacher in demand, we can look at them and say, we're going to treat you well in Coeur d'Alene. You're going to be supported by high quality teaching and learning. a great professional environment, and you're gonna get a wage that's commensurate to this community. Again, removing some dead zones, taking care of the lanes and steps, and also match with our state space increase of 5%. But that would additionally cost $2.3 million expected.
Good afternoon. We're going to move in and talk a little bit about the SPFL. So much of what I'm going to talk about is review. As you know, in August, the board voted to go out for the $8 million for 10 years. And unfortunately, the community didn't pass that. But that doesn't change our need. It's still out there. And we have a little bit of money that we put in for the 430 account that the board voted to move into there. And that will address some of the needs for the first year. But that doesn't change where we're at. I put a packet on your table that has some slides from the August presentation. A lot of that is the Ameresco data. All of that are slides that you've seen. I just put that before you if you want to reference that data, so you know what's out there. But just as a reminder, Ameresco is the program that we bought on to do a facility audit. We went in and did the forensic audit of all of our facilities and cataloged all of the building components. If you look at the picture on this slide, that's Lake City High School. Looking at the aerial view, there's a lot of HVAC components sitting on top of that system, on top of that building. It's pretty intense. And what you don't see is there's still 115 HVAC units that are in the ceilings over each classroom that you don't even see sitting on top of the roof of that. When we start to do those projects and we consider those HVACs, it also makes sense to do roof work at the same time. So I think the point I'm making is that it doesn't change our need. That need is still out there. Thinking back, we still have a current backlog of $25 million in our deferred maintenance. That's going to increase to $60 million over the next 5 years. If you think about the total scope of our district, we have $300 million in total assets. Industry standard would recommend that we put 2% of that towards our deferred maintenance, and we put very little towards our deferred maintenance right now. The average age of a third of our buildings is 30 years. Lake City High School in that photo is included in that. And I think I want to talk a little bit just about systemically what happens when we don't address those. Lake City High School, again, using that as the example. In August, we were having a region-wide transportation training, and the air handler on top of the building was out. During our routine inspections, we found that the heat exchanger was out. We actually found 2 heat exchangers out, one in the commons, one over the auditorium. So we're hosting a training with about 150 people, and everyone's like, it is hot in here. And we're like, yes, it is hot in here. There's no air movement going on at all. That system has been on the deferred maintenance list for a while. We simply did not have the money to replace it. It went out. We were able to replace the heat exchanger itself at about $17,000. Yes, it's a $250,000 unit that should be replaced, and we went ahead and bought probably about another 5 years on that system. But who's to say the motor's not going to go out next? Fernand Elementary, one of the items on that deferred maintenance list was the cooling tower. Day 1 of school, guess the phone call. Fernand's out of AC. It's hot in there. We weren't able to replace that. So it's things like that when we don't address them, knowing that they're coming up, then we start to deal with the ramifications when they go out unexpectedly. And when there's big ticket items, 100,000 plus, we just don't have the funds to address those. We can do some small things with it. The Fernand cooling tower, we were able to recoat the lining of it. Again, we probably bought 5 years, but actually the motor went out after that. So, you start to do one thing, but you just keep working on it. It's like that car that's like, okay, I fixed that. Oh, now the next thing is out. And the next problem on some of those older vehicles, if you use that analogy. I'd also encourage you to think about the recommendation of the Long Range Planning Committee. This has come before you as a recommendation over the last couple of years to continue to manage our deferred maintenance. And I appreciate the board running that election in August. I think that was a great step to try to put that out there. And unfortunately, our community wasn't receptive to it at this point. But it does not change the need. Safety and security would also be a part of that. And I would just remind you, we've given you some lists of the safety and security needs. With some of that money in that 430 account right now, we will tackle some of those priority one levels of safety and security, but that's not going to cover all of it. So those needs will continue to be there. And so if you would consider rerunning a school plant facility levy, we would encourage you to think about that because those needs are still there. And that data is before you on based off of the existing slides. Thanks, Jeff. All right, bear with us. We're almost to the big long Q&A section. But just real quick too, your next slide here is just I think it's a good infographic to show the $20 million levy that was generated in March of 19 has essentially lost more than almost $3.5 million in buying power because of inflation over the course up to July. I can only imagine what that number is going to really reflect when you do a full 4-year, March to March comparison. But this district, so really truly the $20 million levy is buying us more like $17 million worth of stuff and services and the things that we're providing. And so this district's had to do a good job over the last 3.5 years in trimming costs and finding avenues to replace that appreciation. And appreciation just continues to get larger and larger as you know. I mean, we just don't know when that's gonna kind of reset. So our ask is this. As we shared with you in the workshop back, I think it was in towards the end of October, or excuse me, end of August. The ask is this: in order to address our salary needs for our classified and certified, and to keep the programs and operations about as they are today, recognizing that we are already operating a budget scheduled for $1.5 million in the hole. Our ask is to support a request to our community to fund a $25 million maintenance and operations levy. And the ask includes in perpetuity. I think that in perpetuity piece is very important. I've spoken to many of you individually in regards to that need. It is extremely challenging on an organization our size with our budget to every 2 years be wondering whether or not you're going to lose a quarter of your budget. That doesn't happen in any other industry and couldn't be supported in any other industry. As I have shared with you as well, I know of at least 2 employees that we lost last year, last spring, because of the unknown of the passage of a levy this next school year, this current school year. They felt like they could not gamble on an opportunity that came their way on whether or not they were going to have a job in the school year 23-24. So that's just one example. We can do many things, I think, more economical when we know that we have a stable funding source. So we would certainly like to recommend that perpetuity piece is in place. That will allow us to keep our programs. And as we highlighted in a previous slide, that really will help us address our classified and our certified needs. Our classified are approximately 13% minimum underfunded, and that would only move our base to $15 an hour, which is certainly not the dog wagging the tail. We would still be on the back end of everything, but it would get us a little closer. You all saw Boise School District did move to 15 earlier this summer. We're a year behind if we move to 15 next year, and who knows what Burger King and McDonald's and all the other places might be paying. But at least it would be a start. It'd be a good step in the right direction, and it would eliminate that freeze that we have, that hole, that dead space that Dr. Nelson referred to between 5 and 7 years experience. It is not a good practice for us to have, I think it's 5 to 12 years, thank you. Read your lips there, Heather. Between 5 and 12 years to have that 7 years of dead space where you just don't, we just have employees get to understand how things are working. They're all trained up. They're great leaders in our district. And then they're like, wait, I'm going to be froze here for the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. That's not going to work. And so they leave us and they go out to the work world and make more money. So having that $2.5 million would allow us to fix that. And then the same challenge we have with our certified. We at one time used to be a little better paying district than many of our surrounding districts. That's no longer the case. And as Dr. Nelson also shared, our newbies, our new hire employees, for instance, are often frozen at the same salaries for years. And that's not good as you're trying to pay off your student loans, as you're trying to build a career. To know that you're frozen for 3 or 4 years because of our salary schedule, that just needs to be fixed. So I think it could give us an opportunity to revisit that whole salary matrix, that whole schedule, and our HR department has been able to vet all of that and has identified $2.3 million in need in order to fix that. So you can see just between those two items, we're nearly at $5 million, 4.8 to be exact, and so we're asking for that $5 million to be added onto the 20 and placed in perpetuity so that we can function and exist for many years to come. And then second, our ask in regards to the plant facilities levy, as we all know, we asked for $8 million a year for 10 years, so $80 million didn't pass. I think it is important to note that we did receive more than 50% support, and that's encouraging. But I think we need to come up with a bridge, some sort of a short-term plan to get a jump start on our deferred maintenance and put some plans in place. And so we feel like a 5-year ask could accomplish that, and we think at the bare minimum a $5 million ask for 5 years would be a good appropriate ask. So $25 million. So you'd be cutting back from an $80 million ask just a month and a half ago to $25 million. So again, it certainly wouldn't address all of our deferred maintenance, but it would be a step in the right direction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who's going to kind of walk us through a few of our levy rates and just kind of see where we would be at with these conversations, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Alrighty, good evening. So we're going to be on slide 16. You'll see a bar graph. So this is a bar graph of the past 8 years, and then it shows our current year, 2023. And then what 2024 would look like with this, with the $5 million SPFL ask, and then the 20 to 25 million supplemental. 2023, you'll see it's still estimated. We're still waiting on one figure, the operating property value from the state. So it's still currently our assessed value reflects 2021. So we need one more figure, and it'll be certified probably next month. So it's at $99 per thousand right now. You see the trend for the past 8 years. It's significantly gone down as assessed value goes up. In 2024, with the two asks, it would be $1.39 per thousand, which still less than what we just finished with in 2022.
That's estimated.
What's that?
Estimated?
Estimated, yeah. That's based off of 2022-23 or tax year 2022 assessed values.
I'm trying to think how to phrase this. This obviously is your best guesstimate for where it'll be. Are you anticipating if there was a change, can you guesstimate how much that might be?
I can't guess, but if assessed value goes down, then of course the tax rate increases.
But vice versa too, if it goes up?
Then it goes down. Just want a couple of notes about 2022 when we were at $1.56 per thousand. The Idaho Department of Education lists all the tax rates and all levy data for all our school districts in Idaho. In terms of tax rate, we were 72nd out of 115 school districts. So 71 districts had higher tax rates last year than us. However, if you switch it and you look at the levy amount, not the levy rate, we were the 4th largest of all levies. So that includes supplemental, bond, tort, emergency, SPFL, and then for select, I think 4 or 5 school districts, they were created before the Idaho Constitution, so they have pretty much levies in perpetuity. So great for them, big amounts. So looking at amounts in total, we were 4th out of the state, 4th largest. And our market value, so the assessed value, our denominator in our equation, was the 3rd largest. So we have the 3rd largest value in Idaho, if that makes sense. Okay, so going to slide 17, there are 6 different rate scenarios for you. They're grouped into 2 groups, with SPFL and without an SPFL. So we are asking a 5 million SPFL. So you'll see that in the 3rd column that we've included the rate for that. So with SPFL, I've given you scenarios for 20 million, what we currently have, a 23.5 million, and then a 25 million, which is our ask. You'll see with a 20 million and a $5 million SPFL, it would be $1.20. If we ask for a $23.5 million supplemental, it's $1.33 per thousand. And then a 25 million is $1.39 per thousand. Now our next group is without an SPFL, so got rid of that 3rd column. Rates will all be the same for supplemental, bond, and tort, but then we go to $1.99 for 20 million, and again this is based off of the 2022 taxable assessed value. If we go to 23.5, it'd be $1.13 per thousand. And then if we go to 25, it'd be $1.19 per thousand. Any questions on that? Okay, and then our last slide, number 18, it gives an example of one house. Say, and this is all data from Zillow, say we chose a house in zip code 83815. It had a medium home price. Currently in September of $540, so we'll pretend that's January of 2023 for now, because that's all we know. We have 4 years of tax history. We're looking at our tax year 2020 for this home, tax year 21, 22, and then 23. In tax year 2020, the taxable value after taking the homeowner's exemption was $242,000. Our tax rate was $1.79 per thousand. So the homeowner paid $433.18 to Coeur d'Alene for our property taxes. If we go to 2021, assessed value is going up, and the homeowner's exemption was increased by a little bit, by $25,000. So we have a new taxable value of $285. Tax rate went down to $1.56 per thousand. So property taxes increased slightly to $444.60. So now we're in this current year, based off of our estimated tax rate, subject to change. May go down a little bit just because we're still using on our L2 2021 operating property value.
And just really quick, Shannon.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of you that are coming to visit.
Mhm.
We're gonna wrap up pretty quick and move into meet the trustee portion.
All right, so assessed value increased by quite a bit in our 2022 taxable year. That's as of January 2022. So the taxable value shot up to 435 from 285. Yet our property tax rate drastically decreased. It's just reflecting our 20 million supplemental levy right now, along with bond and tort. It's 99 cents per thousand. So this homeowner actually is going to pay slightly less in property taxes for this 2022-23 year than the prior year. Now we're looking at 2023-24 taxable value as of January 2023. We don't know what that will be, so we'll assume taxable assessed value at 2022. With $1.39 per thousand, first I'd like to add assessed value is about $20,000 less from January 2022 on Zillow for this house versus September 2022. So that does show a trend of assessed value decreasing. If the tax rate was $1.39 per thousand, property taxes would be $576.85. So an increase from a little more than $100, $130-something. So that is just an example of what tax bill would look like. That is it for me. Thank you.
That's our presentation. that's our ask. It's remained the same since we met at the end of August. We're asking for that $20 million levy to be moved to 25 in perpetuity. And to go back, we definitely need to address the SPFL concerns, but to drop that to $5 million for 5 years. And you know, when you add both of them up, the extra 5, the extra 5 for the SPFL and the extra 3.5, 5 for the M&O levy, you can see those tax implications. I personally, my hunch is there, from a taxpayer's perspective, there's not a significant difference between a $23.5 million levy and a $25 million levy in regards to whether you support it or you don't. It boils down to what we feel is appropriate for our staff. I think as we have shared, and as I know many of you are concerned with as well, we've got to fix our classified and our certified staffing needs, and that's going to require an additional $5 million. And there's no other way to get to fix that avenue without, again, significantly cutting programs and opportunities for kids that we spent the first half of the presentation showing you how valuable those are to our kids. So with that, I know we're on into the time where we want to meet with our community also. So I'll stop there and certainly entertain any questions anybody has, and then you can finish your agenda.
I would like to, if we're going to continue, this to me is 3 different questions. The levy for $25 million, the perpetuity, and I know you're not saying it that way, but that's how I'm looking at it, and the SPLF. So if we do decide to take action, I'd like to break it into separate votes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes
Okay.
sense, yeah. Are we,
I'm not saying we have to do anything, I'm just saying if we do.
if we do,
I want to break it
yeah,
up.
for sure. Any other, I guess, immediate questions for Dr. Hawker or thoughts? I know that ideally they want as much time as possible to be able to work on levying that kind of thing, but I'm not sure where
Didn't
we're
you
at
say
all.
our last meeting that we had till the next board meeting, which would be November?
Yes, as a backstop, kind of I would say as the very latest deadline would be your November 9th. Is it the 9th? November 7th board meeting. However, as we've shared out, it just puts a 2-week additional crunch on everything. Early voting is going to occur, you know, by the end of January, and moving into the holidays at Thanksgiving and Christmas puts a strain on getting the word out and that. So that's why we asked to have this today. But if the board feels like they would like to digest and have this brought back in another discussion at the November board meeting, we can hold off if that's the board's wishes. It's our preference that we don't do that, and we make a decision sooner than later. But if you're not ready, we obviously can't. So
I prefer to wait.
Okay, thanks.
I think for me, I'm just going to address them quickly. I think the SPFL, to me, makes a lot of sense. Those needs haven't gone away, even with the failure of the SPFL. And I probably would have been uncomfortable with something slightly higher, maybe $6 million for 5 years. I think the feedback I heard, some people just thought it was too big of a project with too much ambiguity in how the money was going to be spent. So I think the 5-year term makes a lot of sense. And you know, it gets a little tricky running multiple measures at the same time. But the need hasn't gone away. I think it makes sense. On the maintenance and operations levy, I certainly understand that the need for an increase in, you know, particularly to address what you guys have highlighted, the salary issues that we do have. I'm not sure on the amount. You know, I think I'm more comfortable if we're increasing at 23.5 with some belt tightening by us or some program selection by us to still do the things for our staff, but maybe we tighten things elsewhere, which I know is challenging and be difficult to do. Perpetuity, I don't know. I think it's a great idea. I'm just concerned how many people is that gonna scare on a vote? And so, you know, before I can make a decision on that, I don't know if there's a way we could do some surveys or thought exchange or something like that to get people's feelings on perpetuity. But I feel like at this point, I don't have enough information other than my own gut on that to support that or not support it. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one. I could settle tentatively on some numbers today, knowing that it gives people a chance to give us some feedback on those numbers, but I could make a call on perpetuity today.
I think my hesitation is we truly aren't going to know what the voters support until we ask the voters to vote on something. We can do preliminary surveys, but it's planting seeds for dollar amounts that may or may not really mean much. There's no question. The least amount of money, the better for everybody. There's no question of that. I think that is why we as a district office team have come up with the $5 million based upon things that we have heard from your desires and things that we have heard from our staff in regards to what needs to be fixed, what needs to happen. With inflation alone, we've been cutting and we're operating essentially on 17 million. So our 20 is not even our true 20, and that's just how that always works, right? You all get that too. So in my opinion, I don't think there's any difference of the voters that would vote yes between 23.5 and 25. They're going to support either one of those. That's my question. Now, whether or not we can get the 50% support in that, obviously that's the magic question. But I just don't see that there's a significant difference between 23.5 and 25. And 25 will get you to at least be the tail on the dog where we can wag a little bit and take care of our classified staff and our certified staff in the manners that I know deep down inside we all want to do. We've just got to find that way to do that. And then we still need to, incorporate $1.5 million that we're already in the red. That we're going to have to find avenues to cut and trim, tighten our belts, as Casey mentioned. We still are going to have to do that. So, our hope is that there'll be some flexibility with some state funding, but we're not going to know that until the end of March, after this question has come before our board, or before our community. We have no idea what the legislature is going to do with some of the new dollars, and it's been spent 1 million times over from the conversations that I've had with folks in the Boise Valley. So I think that's just something to certainly consider. The in perpetuity piece, I totally get that. I think the challenge is, we don't have to look far away at other school districts just up the road in Sandpoint that have done this, and the benefits within their long-term budgeting scenarios, that having a budget, you don't have to levy that. If the state ever did fund us the way that they should fund us, you could choose to levy nothing. You can always do that. But until that happens, we can't hold our breath either. We have to be able to operate and provide the best opportunities that we can for our kids, and continue to provide the best we can afford for all of our staff.
I want to honor our community that's come in and met with us tonight. So I don't know if we need to try and do an earlier meeting than the 7th, or can we wait to continue this discussion on the 7th?
Certainly your choice. If you'd like to try to schedule an earlier meeting with just this item to buy us an extra week or so, we could certainly look at your schedules and see if we could do that, and then fall back maybe as a second choice to just add it as an agenda for your November 7th board meeting. Would that work?
Okay, yeah.
All right,
Let's go
we'll
and do
see
that.
what
We'll
we
see
can
what we can get scheduled, and see if we can't schedule that and have a more fuller conversation to adjust, and then kind of go from there.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for all your work putting that together. We do have 3 other meetings kind of coming up. November 7th, which is our official meeting. We'll find another time for another meeting. ISBA coming up on November 9th through 11th, and then our December 5th meeting. And looking forward to meeting with the community. All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Now cookies and mingle.
All right. Here. is, welcome everyone who's here. There is